This story is not just about surviving cancer. It's actually about awakening, about breaking silence and stepping into her power.
It's been hard, it's been a double-edged sword, but actually it's reshaped who I am as a doctor as well as a person.
Top few things you always think that, especially under 50, you'd like people to know about bowel cancer.
I said, Mum, cancer's not that bad, is it? I was like, what do you mean cancer's not that bad?
Suddenly this bombshell from the doctor on this side, you're actually on the other side of the consultation room.
I don't care what anyone else thinks, because actually, do you know, getting that out to 1 million people or 5 people, it doesn't matter.
Welcome to Her Own Narrative, the space where we reclaim our stories. And today's story is yet another one of courage, clarity, and standing tall to tell your story in your own way, on your own terms. I'm joined by Dr. Anisha Patel, a GP, author, and a stage 3 bowel cancer survivor. But this story is not just about surviving cancer. It's actually about awakening, about breaking silence, and stepping into her power. Let's dive into this powerful conversation about reclaiming power and telling her own narrative, her own way. Dr. Patel, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. Do you know what? I feel a bit tearful, you just saying all that. I can't believe, talking about how far you've come just from back in 2018. But yes, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. My pleasure it is. Right, before we take a deep dive, and that's my favorite way of opening up the conversations, we all have these roles and these identities and stuff like that. If we strip them away and I'm like, you know what, tell me, who are you?
That's a great question. So yeah, as you said, I'm a GP. I specialise in women's health and now cancer as a result of my own diagnosis. But actually I'm a mum to 2 kids who are now 12 and 13, so going through the teenage phase, and a wife to actually, ironically, a bowel cancer specialist, which is what I had, bowel cancer. But I'm, me as a person, I am still that fun-loving individual. I have probably quite boundless energy. And I think, and people would say I'm pretty authentic and wear my heart on my sleeve. And I think that is probably what's helped me grow from what I've been through. My curiousness, my equal love of storytelling and science in equal measures. And my compassion and my determination. I mean, I know that when I was diagnosed, I said I wanted to basically nail the treatment with all the grit and determination I had and come out the other side. And that's definitely how I feel, although the journey or the experience has been really, really bumpy. But I'm still that girl who loves to wear bright clothes, even more so since cancer, just to make sure I know that I'm alive and here. And I still love dancing like nobody's watching. So that is me.
I love that. Absolutely love that. You know what? It's so hard for me to get this out of women. Usually all I get is I'm a woman, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, doctor, or I'm an accountant, I'm this. But you embracing all these things about you, who you actually are. It's amazing to hear that. It's beautiful.
And do you know what's really important though? I don't think I would have had this same conversation with you before cancer. This is my awakening. You were talking about awakenings. Gosh, this has been the utter wake-up call. And maybe it does come with age as well. Maybe. And I think a lot of midlife women are feeling like that. But for me, definitely the turning point has been my diagnosis and then everything that stemmed from it.
So let's go back. It's amazing you said about awakening, about, midlife women finding their identities. And that's so true, because most of the women I'm having a chat with, it is that part of our lives. But obviously for you, it was that turning point.
Definitely.
Do you think there was a part of your identity that actually surprised you most stepping into this chapter of your life?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think I realized how much resilience and courage I had, and because of what I had to go through, and just going through and through and through. So I went through 2 major surgeries. I went through really grueling chemotherapy. My children were 5 and 6 at the time. My husband was working full time. And actually a lot of the fallout from cancer and navigating life after cancer for me has been really, really difficult, and where often there's not much support. And so getting up, I talk about in my book about how I fell off my horse so many times, but I just kept getting back on and back on and back on. And even to this day, 6 years on, you know, I live with long-term issues post the treatment I have. And there are times, thankfully not that often, where that still happens with relation to my health or my mental health with relation to cancer. So I think I amaze myself. And actually, because of going through cancer and seeing what I could do, I have done things that I never, ever thought I would do, whether that is run the London Marathon with half my bowel missing or part of my rectum in my bowel, or, you know, writing a book or working within the media and on TV, to actually working with major research projects. All these things are things that were never on my radar. This was not my map. This was not what was going to happen. And you know what? My son said to me the other day, he said, Mum, he said, cancer's not that bad, is it? I was like, well, what do you mean cancer's not that bad? I know I talk about it a lot, but, well, he said, look at all the cool things you're doing. Like, you're on TV, you've written a book, you're a speaker, you're going to all these cool things in London. And I was like, darling, do you know what? You know, I am really, really lucky and fortunate to have thrived the other end, and for you to see that. And I'm really pleased he can. And I was really adamant, actually, a lot of what I've done is for my children to see that you can turn adversity into something positive. And I really, really, really felt strongly that that is what they took away from this. But I did say to him, I would give cancer back in a heartbeat. You know, there is nothing that would ever want me or you to have to go through this again, but I will take the gifts that it has given totally.
100%. And you know what? This is what you just said it very beautifully. It's the resilience, isn't it? It's how you, life will always throw challenges, how you navigate through the challenges. Yes, it's a word none of us want to hear.
No.
Yeah, but it's come. And how do you actually come on the other side? Not only just battling it, you've come and reclaimed your power and all the cool things now you're doing. So you've just touched upon when actually that happened and you were diagnosed at the age of 39. You're just starting your life. You just had young kids at that point. You're kind of, you know, getting into that stage of your career where you're going to start thriving.
Exactly.
And, you know, all that. And suddenly this bombshell from the doctor on this side, you're actually on the other side of the consultation room. It's not because, you know, it's just understanding that vulnerability. Do you actually recall that moment?
I totally recall the moment. And actually, for me, it's been the most interesting and path for me to be the doctor and the patient. It's been hard. It's been a double-edged sword. But actually, it's reshaped who I am as a doctor as well as a person. But when I was told, or when I found out I had cancer, I knew, because I'm a doctor, because when I was lying and having my colonoscopy, although I'd had sedation, I could see he was biopsying something that was dark and ugly on the screen, and that's not normal bowel. And I kept asking, what is that? And no one would answer. And eventually he said, it's nasty. And you know, my world came crashing down. And even more so probably for my husband, who does this for a job and walked in and saw that same picture. I mean, I think that the loss of control for me with my diagnosis, not being the doctor, but being the patient, was actually the most difficult thing about the whole experience. And it's what I had the most therapy for afterwards. So I did have PTSD after my diagnosis, but I only realized that after 18 months of counseling, when my therapist said, you know what, I think you do have this, the way you talk. And I was like, well, it's cancer. It's not, you know, PTSD I always associated in med school with war and, you know, being raped or something, you know, but actually having a diagnosis like that is traumatic. It's traumatic for me to watch my family, to watch my friends go through this, the trauma of going through the every treatment phase. And yes, I had trauma-based CBT, and that's when I really unpacked what was so traumatic for me. And what was so traumatic was, okay, the actual treatment and what happened, but it was the loss of control for me. For me, that was just soul shattering. It was so out of my comfort zone. I mean, no one wants to be a patient, but even more so when you're the
The
medic.
doctor, yes.
Being wheeled down a corridor made me cry because I was like, I want to get off. I want to walk. I want to be the doctor. Why am I being wheeled down? So yeah, that was tricky.
I can imagine, like totally, like that. And I was going to get into that kind of a question there. So, before I get into your platform, at what point after getting diagnosed and therapy and everything, and then did you say, what point and what triggered that I want to actually talk about this now, own my story and publicly talk about this? It's a big decision to come
It's a
out
big
public.
decision, and especially, as you know, in our community.
Yes.
And I think that was a huge decision. I was very open and honest with all my family, who are all South Asian Gujarati. I was very honest from the offset, partly because I'm a doctor and because I think, well, actually, to me, this is normal. This is what we do. We sort of share, we educate. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. But actually, when I was in the car on my way home from the colonoscopy, my husband has obviously been doing this work for years. And I said to him, we need to do something with this. Like, the irony of this, we're both doctors. You're a specialist in this field. Like, we need to somehow turn this around. So from that minute that I was diagnosed, I was determined, and my husband supported me in that, in this. And so it was in the chemotherapy waiting room that my best friend Jude sat with me waiting. And she said to me, I think you should write your way through this. I think it might help you. I think you should create an Instagram account. Look, there's other people like Deborah James doing it, Bowel Babe. And I said, oh, no, I'm not a social media person. This is not for me. But she opened the account for me. A friend of mine who's into marketing came up with Doctors Get Cancer Too. As because it was that whole thing about anyone can get cancer. This is what it says on the tin. And I didn't post anything for about 3 weeks. But what I did was I started writing about my experience on notes on my phone as a way of sort of documenting and working through what was going on. And with time, I think week 3 was when I had my second major operation to reverse my stoma. I cried for 3 days straight in hospital. 3 days, the floodgates opened, the reality had hit me, because obviously everything started very quickly. And my concern was making sure the kids were all right, making sure they had therapy first. I would just get on with it in my head. But that 3 weeks in, it all crumbled. And I posted that first notes into Instagram, and it went from there. And soon after, it formed a community. And people were then interested to hear what my take was. And I'd research things. So I would try and find answers to questions I had that I couldn't find online as a medic. And then I would say, well, I've tried this, and this is the evidence for this. And then there'd be posts that were completely cathartic dumps that I would dump on Instagram, run away, wouldn't look at the comments, wouldn't engage. There was never this sort of, I wanted to build a following. It was very much my personal space. Yes. And I ran away. And then when I was ready, I'd go back, I'd read all the comments, which would then help me connect. And then I would go to my next counselling session, which I started 4 weeks after my treatment started. And I would read it back to her. I'd cry. We'd talk about it. And then I put that phase of that week away. And I went week by week by week and released a post almost every week, sometimes twice if I needed to. I never went on story. I didn't have the confidence and didn't feel I could be seen to that extent. But what I could do was share my thoughts vulnerably like that, but still have some relative animosity in my head. Clearly it was a public page, but in my head it felt like that.
No, that's beautiful. And I think what you just said is it was your outlet. Yes, it was public, because you were kind of creating ripples and maybe somewhere inspiring someone, maybe somewhere touching someone else's life who is probably going through this themselves, or have a loved one who's going through it, because it's as traumatic for yourself as for your family and your loved ones and your friends as well. So coming back to Doctors Get Cancer Too, when you were in the wheelchair and you're getting pushed around and you're like, well, I want to be on the other side. I want to be the doctor. Why am I being the patient? That could be trauma itself.
Well, that exactly was it. It was exactly what it is. I didn't like seeing my hospital number on the scanner. That really irritated me,
Mm,
seeing my name.
mm.
Thankfully, my professional name and my married name are totally different. So at least I've almost separated those two identities out. So, my professional name is still very much my maiden name, and my married name is on my medical records,
Mm,
etc. So in some
mm.
ways, I have those dual identities, which for me is
Yeah.
really
It,
important.
and it worked for you.
And it works for me, absolutely.
Mm.
But that for me was not okay. And I started, I developed a real fear of MRI scanners. So I already had probably very mild claustrophobia, but that then became more intense to the point I wouldn't even get in the scanner. My husband at one time had his head halfway in the scanner with me because I couldn't cope. And again, I've had to have CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to try and overcome that. And although I have had MRI scans since and I'm much better, it's taken years of working through that, of me trying to teach myself how to crawl through those tunnels in the playground, sort
Mm.
of that exposure, desensitization work, and having my children cheer me on as I come through it. I mean, I just look back and I think, God, it's nuts. They've seen me go through all of this. But again, I go back to that point of seeing that it's okay to have struggles, but you can come out the
How
other
you come back.
end. It's how you come back. And it's also leaning into those tools. It's about finding what works for you in life. And we all should have our own toolbox. I talk about that a lot, about
100%.
having your toolbox of what works for you to help and support your mental and physical health. And I think we should all have one of those, no matter what's happened in your life.
100%, because I think everybody's got a different coping mechanism. How you cope
Yeah,
could be totally different to how I cope with the situation.
correct.
So that's my toolbox is totally different to yours. And we all need that. We all need to figure it out first, because not many of us actually have figured it out.
No, and I'm still figuring it out. So there are some
Yeah.
times, where tools might be broken. So at the minute, I've got a
Mm,
foot problem. I use exercise as my number one tool, and
mm,
I lost my tool. So now I've had to think, how do I change my tools slightly? So I've changed my exercise. But actually, what I find now is, it's more about deeper connections and not being out in big groups, but actually having that one-on-one time. But it's taken me about 8 or 9 months to work out what can fill that void for me. It's so interesting, like, and I think that's what we need to remember, is that tools break, tools can be exchanged, you can buy new tools, and that is what we need to remember.
evolve with how
Exactly,
you're
the growth.
growing. Don't get stuck in the way of, that's it. This is absolutely the thing. I'm going to just work with that.
Yeah,
That's
if it doesn't
amazing.
serve your purpose, get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Move on.
Move on.
So true.
Totally.
So, being on the social media, and you've talked about this, that, okay, one day you will post, ghost for a week, come back, read again, ghost for another two
Not a
weeks,
very
and
good
then
influencer.
no, but I actually I have a different take on this. I feel every single person on this earth is an influencer in their own way,
Yes,
small or big. We are
totally.
influencing somebody on
Out
daily
there.
basis. Yeah. So ghosting or not ghosting, time and, okay, algorithms and all that, that's a different ball game altogether.
It
That's
is.
again what we spoke about. What is your goal in life? Is that what you
Yes.
want? Is totally different. But if your goal, I feel, is totally, it's awakening, and now it's
Yes.
actually going out there and advocating, not even like, I always say your pain becomes your purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But was there a fear that, oh my gosh, obviously going public, as you said, there's not much of a confidence at that point. And no matter how confident and extrovert we are, when going and recording yourself on the story, it takes about 100 takes.
Oh, do you know, I didn't go on stories till way after my treatment. And that's what I mean. I wasn't visible like that. It was very much, it was very much a writing, journaling, information giving platform. And that came later. That really did come later. But for me, as I say, this account has grown organically,
Yeah.
and it is authentic, and it's still vulnerable. And even though I have lots of external agencies in my life, that
Managing.
authenticity
Yeah.
is not going to go, and it's
That's
my
right.
account. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But actually, I know that the community I have on there appreciate what I can give. And that's what that's what I'm not going to change how it started. This is what it is. And what I realized with time is how powerful it could be in terms of health education, in terms of raising awareness, in terms of community, supporting individuals, breaking down barriers, tackling health misinformation, which is absolutely rife on social media, which as medics we have a real problem with. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, because actually for me as a doctor, I can see 40 patients in a day. But actually on a platform like this, I can give one message about checking your breasts or making sure you check your poo or knowing the symptoms of a gynecological cancer. I can do that. And as you say, if I've reached one person, they've gone to their doctor, my job's done.
100%. And you know what you've just said, that makes so much sense. I'm going to give you a little example because I had really low hemoglobin and low iron. So I went to the doctors, got my test done, all that. And then I'm sitting there, I was like, yes, fine, I've got all these tests done, but I need more information. I need information on how to keep on top of it. Yes, I can Google. Yes, I can do all this. And there's so much information out there on social platforms, because this is where we live. This digital world is the real world now. We are not going through books and books and books with the digital world. So it becomes even more of a responsibility now, I feel, as a medic or a doctor. That it's like, I need to get the right information out there.
Absolutely. And actually our royal colleges and everyone is recognizing that, because actually initially there was a little bit of doctors on social media or doctors in the media per se. But actually for me now, if I can be that doctor that goes on TV or in the press or on social media and give the right information and health message how I think's appropriate, that to me is so much more important. I don't care what anyone else thinks, because actually, do you know, getting that out to 1 million people or 5 people, it doesn't matter, because actually you are doing something that is meaningful and that is responsible with the right information. And I think that's where we need to be, and we need all medics to be on board with this as well.
100%. I think there should be a digital board for medics now, that, you know what, you're doing one-to-one patients. Yes, because I'm coming to you because I trust you. You are my savior. A doctor is my savior. I'm coming to you. If you can actually now give me that information on a digital platform, but it's actually verified by a doctor rather than anybody just sitting there and saying, oh, this is what, prevents this, or this is what you need to do to boost this, and I need medical information. And hence I think it's amazing. But there must be what you're saying, I'm not saying must, people still have that thing about, oh, are you a doctor and you're going on social media? Was there fear at any point that this is going to dilute my credibility as a doctor?
Yes, of course, 100%. But you know what, this is my story to share. So if that's how I choose to share it, and if it's giving me purpose and giving me a sense of therapy, I'm gonna carry on doing it. And I know people will be saying things, but I've got to that point that I know that the good that I'm doing out of this platform for others, but also there is a bit about me on this as well. It's helping me. And actually I never thought I was creative. I never thought I wasn't an artist. I wasn't that creative person at school, but somehow through my cancer, I've found this ability to write cathartically with emotion that is so, for me, quite powerful. But I've also developed creativity in terms of making social media. So in terms of content ideas. So at the minute I'm doing sort of doctor-patient role plays, but making it engaging. So I'm trying to think of how do I health educate in an engaging way to make sure my information is getting across to someone. People don't want to just read lists. We need to be capturing people. You know what, this mindless scrolling, you catch people for 3 seconds. Actually, we need to think about how we hook people in to do this. And so that's released that creativity in me. And also it's led me on to my book. I mean, this book is the birth of my social media platform. So many people said to me, why don't you write a book? Because you've written all of this information down over bits and bobs over your social media. But what if it was in a book? And I thought, oh. And when I was approached in May 22, I think, bowel cancer has been talked about more because of the brilliant Dame Deborah James, a legend that she was, and people are more interested in wanting to know. And when they approached me, they said, we'd like you to write an A to Z of bowel cancer. And I said, that sounds a bit boring. Like, it's more, we need people to want to engage with this. So I said, let me bring my social media and what I wrote in real time to this book. Let me bring the voices of other people in the bowel cancer community to this book who've experienced different things, whether that be, stage 4 cancer or relationship difficulties, or they've had to have, surrogacy because they're infertile, all these other aspects in this book. And then let me write about how you navigate life after cancer, because actually half of the book's about that. Because life after cancer is never spoken about.
Never spoken about, yes.
Never, ever. And there's no support. And so that is what I've dedicated. Even now, I still write about life after cancer, because there are times when it bites me on the bum. And actually all the cancer community, and they all come in and go, Anisha, I'm so glad you wrote that. God, I was feeling like that. Gives me hope.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be to people. I'm 6 years cancer free. You can do it. You can rebuild your life. You can go back to your job. You can thrive. And if you don't want to do other things, that's also okay. You don't have to be on social media.
Yeah.
But I want you to be able to have as good a life, as better quality of life as you can, having been through what you've been through.
But you've just said that so right. Everybody says, okay, so you've survived the cancer and you got diagnosed, you got through it. Now they assume everything is fine.
Yeah, you're done. Off you
You're
pop.
done. You're done.
Crack on.
Yeah, but there is so much. How can you forget how many years and the pain of going into chemo, coming out of chemo, and all that is not easy.
And the fear of cancer coming back, right?
Yes. The fear of cancer coming back, the fear, and your family around you that, oh my gosh, what? So it's a life after cancer is as important as going through it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a lot of the work that I do now. I'm working with a charity in my own hospital to build a life after cancer clinic. I'm ambassador of Bowel Cancer UK. They are doing a similar thing. And actually, these are all things that I never thought I would see come to fruition, actually turning now my experience into a book, into a clinic. I mean, I'm living my ultimate passion project here, and it's so exciting. It really is.
Love that. Absolutely love that. You know what you just said? So this is not actually just surviving the cancer. This is actually rebirth of Anisha and Dr. Patel, isn't it? If Dr. Patel was there, and now Anisha has just come out on the other side of this.
Honestly. But I'm always going to have ideas. And I think that's what I feel, is that I can really free these ideas now, and that, as I said, that creativity, and just go with it. Never say no now. Never say no.
Never say no, because you don't know what that opportunity would bring you somewhere else. Like 10 years later, even, you don't know. And if you don't try, how would you know? It might not even work at all.
Exactly.
But you've got to try in life. And you know what actually is my favorite part of this whole thing, why I do this, is seeing these resilient women is my favorite thing in the world. And how we not only just beat it, we actually come thriving on the other end.
Yes.
Come on, bring
it's
it on.
Incredible, isn't it? It really
you
is.
Bring it on. You want to test me live? Come on, test more.
And some more. Come on.
And I'm ready, and I'm going to come out bigger and stronger. That is
100%.
what absolutely. And it doesn't have to be whole new, like, obviously your story is very powerful because your path and the pain is totally different, but doesn't make anyone else's pain less.
And I talk about adversity. So even in the book, this book is very applicable to anyone, because actually it's about adversity per se. Even my children, having a bad time at school, that's a period of adversity. And it's how we turn that around. We should never create this thing called toxic. I talk about toxic positivity. We should never sort of belittle someone's experience. No. If that is how you're feeling, we need to invalidate. We need to be empathetic. And we need to then help you, support you, move through that, give you the tools. But actually, everyone's experience is valid. It doesn't matter what it is.
Exactly right. Whatever your feeling is, you're validated. And I think talking about it somewhere, it doesn't have to be a social platform, but talking about your feeling, and somebody is
so
hearing it to you, because you're being heard. You're being seen, and that your feeling is valid. Even no one can tell you your feeling is wrong. Feeling is feeling.
Exactly. And I think that's where we sometimes, can go wrong. And I do a lot of work with corporate clients to talk about empathy. And when people are returning to work after sickness, how can you support people better? How can you listen? And how can you, we're not a one fit all, everyone is different. Their social setup is different. Their job is different. Their life, their commitments, their personality. There are so many variables, and we need to be fluid with that.
100%. Life is about fluidity. Coming back
Correct.
to, what you just said, that you now educate people. Is there one thing or like top few things you always think that, especially under 50, you'd like people to know about bowel cancer?
So I think that we know that bowel cancer in the young is increasing. And actually, since the 1990s, the rate of bowel cancer, or rectal cancer, should I say, which is the bottom part of your bowel where the stool's stored, that has increased 4 times. And the rate of colon cancer, which is a large bowel, has increased 2 times twice as much in the under 50s. And there are loads of reasons that they think this might be. But I'm involved in a very, very big project with £20 million funding, which is global and set out by Harvard University professors who found me to come on board as their lead patient advocate to try and drive what is causing this global rise in bowel cancer in the young. And we're seeing it in other cancers as well, breast cancers, head and neck cancers. And so we're hoping that the data that we get and the risk factors that we expose, these novel risk factors, which could be things like microplastics, we know it could be certain bacteria in the gut, the gut microbiome. There's lots of things we're looking into, environmental, ultra-processed food. We think these might be applied to other cancers as well. And I think what I want to say is a female Asian who was diagnosed as 39 sitting here in front of you today is cancer does not discriminate. I had no risk factors. I had no family history. I'm married to a bowel cancer specialist. It does not discriminate. You are never too old, young, black, brown, thin, fat, whatever you want to say about it. It's just, this just happens to anyone. And I think what my number one thing is that you need to know your normal. If you don't know what your normal is for you in terms of your health, in terms of, skin, breasts, testicles, vulva, poo, if you don't look in the toilet or your wee, how will you know if there's blood in it? How will you know if something changes, and how will you know when you need to go to the doctor? And we know that a significant amount of people for all cancers don't know the symptoms. And we don't want to fuel health anxiety, but actually you need to know when something changes.
Pay attention to your body.
Exactly. And go and see your doctor.
If you don't ignore it. That's what you're saying. If there is a problem, there is an issue, talk about it and go to the doctor and see.
Yeah.
But saying that, I know, and this is again, it's not about a political point or anything, but still there are lots of, I know people who've gone to the doctors and they weren't detected, but eventually they did come out with a cancer. Is there still a lot of grey area in detection?
Cancer, particularly...
Or diagnose, actually.
Yeah, so certain cancers are harder to diagnose. Pancreatic, ovarian, for example, often diagnosed at a later stage. I think we have enough tests in our workplace when it comes to bowel cancer, something called a FIT test, which is a tiny poo test that we use in the bowel cancer screening program as well. This is a simple test along with other tests that we can do in general practice. And I think gone are the days now. So that test wasn't there when I was diagnosed in general practice. It's there now. And I think if you have symptoms, it's much easier. It's been absolutely revolutionary in terms of detecting cancers. I think what I always want to do with patients, and the other thing that I like to health educate about, is how you make the most of your consultation to make sure that you get to where you need to. And sometimes we see patients and they go off on various tangents. They don't know the right, when was the date of your last period? How often are you getting blood? They don't know the frequency of the symptoms. They don't have to hand the information that actually would make a huge difference to, if you say to me, I'm sometimes getting blood in my poo, to actually it's 5 days a week. That's a huge difference, but sometimes still could be 5 days a week.
Yes.
And so I always say to patients, whatever your symptoms are, keep a diary for a couple of weeks. That is not going to harm. Take the diary with you. It's very hard to ignore something in black and white. So I always say to patients, go with the right information. Ask your family, is there a family history of this illness? Go with the medications, go with what you've tried, go with, what you've, the dates of when it started. Have you had these symptoms before? And focus on that one problem. I get that you might have multiple, but unfortunately, sometimes that muddies what the most important thing should be. And if you're not sure, give all the problems at the beginning and your GP will say, well, I can deal with that. And I think that definitely needs dealing with today because that could be something serious. But next time we will deal with the rest. And, I think empowering the patient to go armed with what their ideas are about the illness, what their concerns are, and what they expect is really important. If you feel that you've not been listened to, or if you feel that you haven't had the test or you're not getting the answer or you're still worried, go back. And if it's not to that doctor, go back to someone else. I won't be offended if you ask for a second opinion. I really won't. And actually, sometimes as doctors, when we're really struggling, sometimes we do say, could you go and see my colleague? I want to make sure I'm not missing something
But
here
that's
been
part of
staring me.
research, isn't it? That's called
Exactly.
research. You just want to make sure that you're right.
Exactly. And I think that is okay. And we need to be comfortable. And I think most doctors are these days, we are comfortable with actually, we might not know everything, but we'll go and find the answer, go and refer, or go and ask someone else.
Is that openness of learning, of knowing and finding a solution rather than saying it's a problem and I want to just give A to Z. No, you can't. And sometimes it's okay to go and ask. But you know what you just touched upon? It's so interesting because I was watching morning breakfast show. I think it was Dr. Naga. And she said exactly, I think she's written a book about what to ask a GP or something on that terms. I might be getting the title wrong here. And there was another doctor I was talking to and she was talking exactly the same. Ask the right questions.
Correct.
Make your diary. Put everything out there. Don't go to a GP with just saying, I need something.
Stay focused on the story, right? Because we've got 10 minutes and we need to examine you. We need to come up with a plan. But I want to hear what you've got to say. So in that 5 minutes when you're talking, I need to hear the salient bits. And I don't want you to forget anything. I don't know about you, but when I've gone to the doctor, I'd be like, oh, you wish you'd said something because actually you're under pressure. It is. It's quite stressful for some patients. And even I do. When I used to go and see my oncologist, I used to write it all down. And she was like, yeah, go for it. Start reading from your list. Brilliant. And actually then she felt good that I'd told her everything. I felt good that I'd read my list and we had a plan.
But that's preparation, isn't it? That's preparation for anything.
Is key.
That's whatever you input is the direct output is directly related to what you input.
You'd prepare to go to a hairdresser or you might not. You'd say, I want this style, or you'd go to your mortgage lender and, prepare your speech about how you want, this is the same with the doctor's appointment. In fact, it's even more important.
Definitely. It's more for your health. I love that. Absolutely love it. And, it's what is more interesting is all the doctors are getting on board. So maybe we will have to come up with a system where there's a good input form where we have to kind of say, yes, this is the problem, doctor. You've already got my information here.
So health literacy is a massive, massive passion project of mine. And I think particularly within marginalised groups, particularly in communities where there isn't as much health education or health literacy, whether that be Black and Asian groups, those that are less abled, all these groups that historically it's been more difficult to access healthcare for a variety of barriers that actually society has imposed as well. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about is actually making sure we start this young. This should be in PHSE in school. Yes. So they do all this PHSE now. Where is the knowing your normal? Where is the teach them the right names for the gynae anatomy and use the correct names? Because if you're full of shame and you're embarrassed and, all these, names of vulva and vagina are all taboo, how will they go to their doctor because they feel embarrassed? And this is what we're saying. 1/3 of people researched by the Eva Pill recently are too embarrassed to go to their doctor with a gynecological symptom because we've made it like that as a society. Yes. So we need to go back to school. We need to be going into schools, talking how I'm talking to you now, and also saying, how do you advocate for yourself? Patient advocacy is very, very important. How do I give you the tools to advocate for yourself? How do I get you to make the most out of your doctor's appointments in the future and use the right words? And how do I teach you to know your normal? And I think that is basic. We owe that, surely.
Yeah, like I'm going to just give it out because I have another recording very soon with somebody who actually advocates speaking the right words, give the right term. If your elbow is called elbow, vagina is called vagina.
Yeah.
Don't stay down there because I wouldn't know what is down there and, what are your problems down there? Which part of down there is a problem?
Yes, it's a lot of anatomy down there.
Yeah, so that's it. It's amazing. I actually know this answer, but I want to hear from you. I know this answer because I can feel it. So if I have to ask you, what's your most favorite part of Anisha right now, not Dr. Patel? Anisha right now? Is it being the doctor, GP, author, speaker, advocate? Let's see if I can just see it, but let's see what you say.
Do you know what I do? I love it all, and I think everything complements each other. I couldn't do all the other things that I do outside my general practice life without being a GP, and I fundamentally believe that. I will never stop being a NHS GP because that is the core of all the other work that I do, because I need to understand the system I work in. I need to understand the constraints. I need to understand and work for the population that I'm also trying to serve in these other arenas. But I absolutely love the health educating. I think and thrive, and it's a huge passion project of mine because it's a skill that I didn't know I had on this wider platform. Yes. It's something that's been unleashed, and people always say when I have my appraisals, you just light up. You light up whenever you're in a room doing it or when you're talking about it. And I know I do. And that's okay.
But that's amazing. That's not okay. That's amazing. If something can light you up, if you can actually feel you're alive, we all come with a purpose in this world. If you found your purpose.
Yeah. I definitely have.
You're so lucky to have found. Not many of us do.
And I know that, and I'm really grateful. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be in this position now and have found so many bows to my string that are giving me so much joy as well.
That's amazing. One more thing, if someone is listening to you and getting moved by, it's just somewhere they're going through the diagnosis themselves or someone they know, what is one thing you'd leave them with?
I think going through the whole experience is really tricky. And actually the beginning bit, the waiting, is the hardest part. But the one thing that I would say to you is there will be good, there'll be bad days, there'll be everything in between. But through the bad days, just remember that tomorrow is always another day, and that you will find your tools and you will find your tribe to get you through it. And I think finding your tribe that has connection, not just through treatment, but afterwards as well, is absolutely key to getting through this. Because even though I felt I had an army behind me, I have never felt so alone.
Lonely.
And when I talk about finding my tribe, that isn't just my family and friends here. I found community through my online cancer community. I've found community through charities and the work I do with them, and also connecting with individuals through that. And it's not for everyone, but you need to find out what can really see you through. I know after treatments, I used to plan for my week off chemo fun things. I used to ask my girls, let's go for afternoon tea. Can you pick me up? Or can we go for some walks? Or can we go for a gym session? Those things that I couldn't do. Always needed something to look forward to. A bright red lipstick, a sparkly skirt that's absolutely impractical, but I'm going to wear it anyway.
Yeah.
Who cares? Yeah. All those things that bring you joy. I find the small joys in life. And that is what cancer's taught me so much about. Like I loved life before cancer, but I love life even more now, because actually it's finding the joy in the smaller things.
It's actually you start appreciating life, isn't it? We don't take it for granted anymore.
Oh, I'm sure. I think I said to my husband in lockdown, which was just shortly after my treatment finished, did the flowers look brighter?
Isn't that beautiful?
Is it less pollution? I was trying to find a scientific, and it's like, no, I think actually the volume of life is just turned up. I will stop, I will pause, that butterfly, that this, that. And yes, I do take photos a lot, but actually it makes me stop and look and appreciate and process.
It's all the things we take for granted. It's like, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. Definitely. It's
yes.
Who says that? We take these things for granted. I'll do it tomorrow. Who knows if tomorrow is going to come?
Who knows what tomorrow is going to bring? Absolutely. And I think it's just taking that time to just pause and appreciate. And I think always reflecting on looking how far you've come is really important. So if you feel in treatment that you're, things are, getting tough, or after treatment, just look at what you've done before. And I've said this to a friend recently who hadn't gone through cancer, but she's having a tough time. And I said to her, journal. Because actually, if you go back to the beginning of that journal, it looked really different to what it looks like now. And actually, you can then see that growth, that healing, what's happened in between.
That's in general, isn't it, for people? Because we keep saying, "Oh, I haven't moved at the speed," but actually look at it. Your goalpost is actually moved. It's not that you haven't moved. Your goalpost is moved, and now you want something more than what you wanted 6 months ago.
Correct. Absolutely.
I love that.
So I think women supporting women is so important, and I think that's been one of the biggest things, particularly in midlife, that has helped me navigate along, because I went into menopause early due to my chemo. So I was one of the first within my friendship groups. But together with all those changes and the demands of midlife, and then obviously managing my own health with what's happened, I think the whole women supporting women thing is so important. And I've also been in lots of situations where people haven't supported me. I like to think that I've supported others, but there have been times, and actually the negative effect of that is huge. And I think when it keeps happening, I think that can really, really have consequences. So for me, how can women support women? I think the first thing is actually holding space for each other, by cheering each other on, by actually being authentic. So we see a lot on Instagram about, I post it as well, all the wonderful things we do, but I think having that, again, I go back to what's important, that authenticity and that vulnerability is so important. It's so important for us to connect with, and for us to feel supported and seen. And also by refusing, and this is something I've, bearing in mind that my platform came out of adversity. There are lots of people out there where dog eats dog in this world. Yes. And that's in all communities and all platforms. Mm-hmm. But actually refusing to be complicit and entering a world that's competing and putting women against each other is paramount.
It is.
And that is something that I've really had to take a step back from and go, I don't want to be part of this. This is never where this came from. Listening back to how this started, I hadn't gone on social media to have a business, to, be an influencer.
That's right.
This has come from a different place. So actually, I stay in my own lane and I'm just going to do me. And I'm hoping that other women will support me in that.
You know what you've just said? It's absolutely point. That's the point. There is no competition, because there can never be another Anisha. There can be a doctor, they can be a cancer survivor, they can be a speaker,
Correct.
They can be an author, but there is no another Anisha Patel in the world. So there is no competition. You are your own competition, not even competition. You're your own inspiration. So why are we in a space, and this is the whole reason I started this platform, why are we in a space? Because we've all had our journeys. Why are we getting judged, right or wrong? My journey is my journey. Yeah, I might have done right. I might have done something wrong. I might have made mistakes. I might have achieved a lot. But why am I getting judged by others for that? Why can't we actually hold space for each other and say, I get you. I don't agree, but I get you.
And I think that's key. And I think, that's why I love the owning your own narrative thing, because that is what it's about. And actually, we should be learning from each other's narratives and empowering each other with those narratives. And it's taken a long time. A really good friend of mine has said to me over the years that, Anisha, you need to know your worth, because I've always felt quite imposterish, because I've come out of this from nowhere and had these amazing opportunities. And then people may take advantage, or people may not treat you right. And I've had that. And actually, she keeps banging on at me about knowing your worth. And it's taken me a long time to go, actually, 2025 is my year of knowing my worth and owning my truth and sort of making sure that I keep doing what I'm doing and try and block out all that other noise. And it's really hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy.
Oh
It's
my
really
gosh, it
hard.
gets harder and harder. The more you achieve, the noise gets louder and it gets harder. I get it. I completely get it, because what you're saying is actually, now this is going to open up a completely different conversation, because what you're getting to is absolutely right. Knowing your worth. How do you know your worth? It's easier to say, know your worth, know your worth, know your
How
worth.
do you know what success is? Well, actually, that's measured differently for everyone. And that goes to all these conversations,
Exactly.
doesn't it? Success for me is totally about having my health. That's like my number one success. If I'm well, then I've done well. And actually, success is connecting with people. It's by empowering them, giving them tools, educating. For me, that is success. It's not about how many books I sold. And, people said to me, oh, why are you writing a book on that? It's not going to be a Sunday Times bestseller. I don't care.
Yeah,
It's not
it
about
doesn't
how many
matter.
I
Yeah.
sold. It was about how I'll make someone feel, the fact that I can hold their hand from afar, went through this, quite
And
frankly,
the
shitty
fact that
journey.
you are capable of writing a freaking book. I think
I
that
know.
is the biggest thing.
There's
So
that as well, isn't there?
you've surprised yourself, haven't you? Like you said, you never thought you were creative, but today you're an author. So isn't that worth it? To find that your power actually is there. You can do anything you put your mind to.
And that goes back to what I want my children to see. I think
Exactly.
that is all we can do when, none of us get parenting right. But actually, if we can make these marks of just going, you can do whatever you want to do. That's
Whatever
all I
you
want them
want.
to know.
And that's the whole point. The whole point is own your narrative, good or bad, but that's your way and your own way of telling your own truth, your own story, not anybody else telling your story. And then coming
Absolutely.
out on the other end, supporting each other and holding that space. But I do feel, and I think one of the podcasts I did say that I think there is a massive shift in women right now, what I'm seeing. Our generation, there is such a shift. Maybe I'm just so lucky that I'm attracting the right women on board. Like, they say you find your tribe.
Correct.
Every woman I am speaking to right now, we hold the same space, the same ideologies. We're
Yeah.
talking about the same things. We're saying, come on, girls, we need each other.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
think we need to surround ourselves with those like-minded individuals, because otherwise it can detract away and take energy away from the work that we're all trying to do, that's so, so important. So I think save
that's
your
it.
energy for the things that matter.
That's it. If someone's draining you, block them. If
Drainers
someone's
go,
Rain
radiators
is good.
stay.
There we go. There we go. Simple life. If there, I've learned this hard way, and actually a very good friend, like you, your friend says, know your worth. My friend says, fill your cup. Fill your cup.
Fill your cup.
Whoever is sucking it out, take them out. You just want to go and pour it. You've got nothing left. Why are you pouring into someone else's cup right now? And
We
that
all
is
live by
where,
that.
yeah, but that is what a good tribe around you is going to do. They're going to give you the tools to uplift yourself and uplift others in the meantime as well.
And
In
I
the
think if that
process.
tribe slightly changes, that's okay. I think
That's
we've
okay.
all felt so uncomfortable with that, haven't we, for so long? And I know
Yes.
I find it so uncomfortable as an eternal people pleaser. I've sort of gone, actually, do you know what? This is okay. This is actually a little bit toxic. Or actually, I do need to call you out on that. And I'm sorry, not in a mean way, but I think it's
No.
just being honest, because I'd wear your heart on your sleeve and just, say it
And
how it is.
as you grow, Anisha, I think your group changes, the circle
Yeah.
around you changes, and
Your
actually
needs change.
your needs change. And this is so interesting because people used to take shame in that. People used to
Yes.
say, you can't keep your friends. There is no shame, because I had this conversation a few weeks ago. I think I was talking to my kids, and my kids had a kind of a dig at me saying, oh, mom, your friends change all the time. I said, yes, surely they change. And it's taken me a long time coming into a different country, first of all.
Yeah.
Finding friends. First, I was fitting in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've spent a lot of my life doing.
Yeah, I was fitting in for so long. Then I was thinking that were my friend group. That wasn't. That was me fitting in. The minute I stopped fitting in, the friends group changed. Then you think, no, actually, this is probably not right for me. Then your friends group, and there is no shame in it. Why is there a shame attached to it? You don't have to live with what choices you made 10 years ago.
And that's right. And people break up with their husbands or
Yeah.
wives. That same thing can happen, right?
Mm.
And it is hard,
And it's
but
hard.
it's also life is short, and we shouldn't be wasting our energy on things like
No,
that.
no, we must not. Oh my gosh, I feel like we can keep talking and talking and talking, and this is amazing.
Oh,
Awesome.
I'm so
This
pleased.
this has been such a lovely
It's been a lovely
conversation.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, that was Dr. Anisha's journey. It doesn't only remind us of painful chapters, it actually gives us clarity, purpose, and power. And what I always say, if she could, so could you. Just own your story, own your narrative, and tell it your way. Don't let anybody else tell it their way, your story. Until next time, keep watching, keep subscribing, and keep spreading love and empower others. Don't forget.